IT professionals, mark your calendars. Zero Trust World 2025 is happening in Orlando, Florida, February 19th to 21st. This event is tailored for IT leaders and cybersecurity experts who want actionable insights on zero trust strategies, practical solutions for modern threats, and meaningful connections with industry peers. Plus, take advantage of hands-on cyber hero boot camps, expert-led sessions, and the chance to earn CPE credits and your Cyber Hero certificate. Save $200 on your in-person registration using discount code ZTWSW25 at securityweekly.com/ZTW2025. Reserve your spot now. Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. We just talked with Niv Braun about AppSec that's AI-related and AI-specific, along with parsing through a lot of the FUD in Gen AI security. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with John Kinsella. One quick announcement. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSA Conference 2025 full conference pass. Yes, it's actually time to start talking about RSA already. RSA Conference will take place April 28th to May 1st here in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC25 and use the code 5U5, that looks sus, Sec Weekly. That's 5U5 Sec Weekly. We hope to see you there. John, I wanted to start off with, it's only been a few months since a new Wallace and Gromit movie has come out, which I was quite excited about. And on the tail of a new Wallace and Gromit movie, there is a company who is changing the license of their open source project to be more proprietary. And of course, I'm talking about 2005's Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Were-Rabbit and Nessus going to OpenVAS. But the reason I bring that up is that we also have Wallace and Gromit Vengeance Most Foul, followed by some Opengrep and Semgrep shenanigans going on. And I say that obviously a bit lightheartedly, but I will try to boil this down to maybe one or two sentences and throw it over to you to see what you think about this. But Semgrep has changed the license of their rules engine, essentially so that the rules that they create, that community creates for that use, remain essentially for their tool, for their SaaS offering, while other rules and rule sets can still be used for that and shared amongst the community or used by other competitors, for example. But this is more of a license refinement, I will say. Now, the engine itself remains open source, but I have a link to the chief product officer who was explaining on a LinkedIn post some of this. But one thing that people have been pointing out is that the engine itself, while the license remains LGPL, some features have not gone into it that have gone into the commercial SaaS offering. And those features are what other competitors or what other users are saying, these are what the community would benefit from enriching it. And so there is still perhaps a seed of interesting angles that I'm still also learning about why Opengrep now is a open source fork of of the engine as opposed to just the rules. So perhaps that was more than a sentence or two, but let's see, John, if that made sense to you and what questions you still have.
I'm just looking through the insights on GitHub. Anytime something like this happens, unfortunately nowadays, I start the negative side of me starts wondering, okay, is there some other company pushing this, or what's going on? I don't see that pattern in any of the committers, at least the top ones. And part of which is sort of funny here, or maybe not funny, but as a result of Git is it's as part of that fork is they're getting all the previous committers as well, but nothing is sticking out, at least from a quick glance, as some unique company doing this. I think it's, at least for me, it's always unfortunate when a project forks, whatever the reason, right? It's a very manifest sign of strong disagreement between two parties that they couldn't figure a way to work it out. So that's usually just unfortunate to me. And sometimes the forks live and thrive. Sometimes they survive for a few weeks or months and they sort of go poof because it takes a lot of work to make these and go. So that's always unfortunate. I see what's going on here from the licensing point of view. That does irk people. And as you say, also sort of like when you start having different features and functionality, as a company or a startup, that organization cares. There's reasons that they're focusing on certain features or going in a certain direction. That's not always good. I don't know the case here, but like I have seen companies where, a product manager or a CEO would be like, I'm not allowing that feature into my product because then a customer won't blah, 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 blah. Either pay more, pay less, use something else, or there's reasons. So that's unfortunate. I don't know. Part of me thinks that the one of the exciting things around Semgrep was the rules, right? It's a tool by itself. It's I'll say fancy grep and look like yelled at, but it's a tool. But when you have that collection of rules which pre-exist that the community can use, that's when that becomes powerful, and that you can share those rules with other people for doing detection and research. So, I think throw this on the list of things we'll look at over the year. And hey, maybe they'll actually figure out a way to work out the differences and merge these two back together later.
Yeah, and we'll see. On a personal note, I had actually worked on PIFF, PFFF, which also has terrible naming convention to it, but it's basically a project that came out of Facebook, of all places, well over a decade ago, that was OCaml, and I was working on some aspects of just making it look and find PHP, insecure configuration, insecure code. So OCaml had it took me a painful month to learn some syntax and how to deal with OCaml, but I loved it. So Opengrep, Semgrep, definitely a thing that we're going to check on in 6 months from now to see what comes from. And to reinforce your point too, listeners, I threw in some quotes about that whole the back in 2005 and what the Nessus project owners, what their reasons were. So check out the show notes and you'll see how much that echoes the points that John was just making right now. But John, there's a lot of news we got to get through, so we can't talk all about Opengrep. There's some fun things, and we have covered lots of ones all the time, and I was thinking of you when I saw this one from Sam Curry, once again, hacking Subaru,
Yes.
tracking and controlling cars via Starlink admin panel. And this was really cool. A bit of a spoiler, it boils down to like one of the most simplest face palming other phrases of like a password reset that just looks ridiculous. But I can add to that. But I know you enjoy car hacking, so tell us about this.
I do. And yeah, we both found a few of these articles this week that both tickled us. But man. So I'll start off with saying, like, think about, one of the most. I'm trying to think if we heard the phrase in the last half hour. I don't think so. One of the most over-repeated phrases in security from vendors is, and even from us probably, right, is it comes down to your weakest link. And that's sort of what you're seeing here, right? It's that no, and it's funny. So like the Wired version of this article where I first saw this opens with the sentence of he bought his mom a car with the one requirement that she allow him to hack it in the future, which is sort of amazing. Here, Mom, I've got a car for you. By the way, I need to hack it. But he's not finding the faults he's finding are in an API for some cloud service, which is controlling the car, or that wasn't. Well, it's partially to control, but partially to gather data too. And it's, I think a single word, unfortunate. We just went from talking about what sounded to me like really great ways of securing AI and training and machine learning and agents and all these very cool, hot new things to somebody didn't secure an API on a web server.
Even worse, they didn't secure the API because the reset password, all you had to do was provide the employee email of the password you wanted reset, just the email. Great. So now you got the reset password. Oh, but it pops up a 2FA prompt. And literally, they just commented out the UI prompt for the 2FA to bypass it. So this is just, I could think of more words that describe this that don't start with the letter U, but it was just unfortunate. Yes.
Excuse me. And we've talked about, for some reason, it's making me think about Toyota's had these problems in the past too. And probably some of the other big car manufacturers, because their specialty in their world that they've lived in for decades now is, how do you do design and manufacturing for mass market? Something on four wheels, you put like an engine in there, it's going to burn, something that the dinosaurs, parts of dinosaurs from many, many thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of years ago. And that's what they do, right? And this sort of quote, air quotes, scare quotes, high tech stuff is just, it's not their space, and they're getting better. That's so. Anyways, where I wanted to go with this, besides just sort of ranting, is if we think about new industries, if people are looking for bug bounties or hacking or things like that, do you want to go and try to hack the latest version of a Chrome browser or something like that that's being done by a high tech, very high tech company with tens of thousands of like some of the smartest folks out there, or do you want to maybe go after, I don't know, John Deere's an example, or some other sort of low-tech company that's been producing things for a while, and now they're trying to, add AI to their product. Which one of those do you want to go after and try to get a bug bounty on? Yeah.
No, great point. And here's where I'll find the callback to our great conversation with Niv. He was talking about, in so many words, like who's the safety issues or the security considerations of, call it privacy, with Gen AI, LLMs, data that's being trained on. And here, not only was you could remotely start, stop, lock, unlock the vehicle, but there was a lot of vehicle history. There was PI, personal information that was associated with the customer, emergency contacts, etc. So a long list of things that just is essentially your car is a mobile surveillance unit of you and where you've been. So great article, great hacking, and we hope to see Shubham Shah and Sam Curry do a lot more of this work. We've also seen another security researcher, this is Jane Wong, here in San Francisco, who was doing some fun hacking of Waymo. Slightly different consequences and outcome here, but I think the reason I wanted to pull this article out is that she showed how to change what was being shown on the little spinny, call it LED screen on top of a Waymo to be arbitrary. And it was done basically from a hidden feature that she discovered on the app. And this wasn't something that, as she said, no jailbreaking, no rooting required, just change the car ID to something beyond when it would normally accept. And that sounds like a pretty straightforward type of hacker mentality and bug bounty approach. So kudos for that.
Yeah, briefly, I mean, that's sort of, at least to me, it's sort of reinforcing the point I was just making of, okay, cool, high-tech company, they're putting all their efforts into, training and AI and learning and like trying to get this car to, not have, I mean, if anyone hasn't been in San Francisco in the last year or two, the streets are covered in these damn cars. It is insane. But yeah, right there. So they're focused on how do we make money off this thing sort of driving around and like getting people from point A to point B and overcharging for that. And the last thing they're thinking about is the security of that thing on top that's sort of trolling around. And find that weakest link.
Weakest link. And to be clear, the weakest link aren't humans. The weakest link are specifications and protocols and programs. And one weakest link, John, this made me smile. Here's some research out of Portswigger, stealing HTTP-only cookies with the cookie sandwich technique. Now, I will say up front, this isn't the most consequential thing, like stealing HTTP-only cookies, like, okay, cool. And there is, like, it did require an XSS when he demonstrated a real-world example. But me downplaying that aside, I think it's pretty awesome research that is showing how a old cookie spec can be misused and abused from a browser parser perspective in the sense of, where do you place double quotes and how do you have double quotes and the cookie version value, which is supported in the dusty ancient RFCs, to trick things like Apache Tomcat into revealing a PHP session ID. So what they do essentially are, and here I'll quote, because the Chrome browser doesn't support legacy cookies, so this is good, it lets attackers create a cookie name that starts with a $, like $version. And with this, that's how they say version equals 1, meaning here's an old legacy type of cookie. And then they start to throw in some double quotes. And those double quotes get misunderstood, misparsed, that to rather than be part of a cookie's value, they delimit the start and end across multiple values, thus having a sandwich of double quotes that leaks a cookie. Go read it. The write-up is probably more eloquent than I am right there. But this just spoke to my heart of just seeing like ancient specs, legacy code, what do you support, what do you not support, and parsing, which is definitely going to be a preview of a topic I'm going to come back to several times, I think, over the year. But John, have I lost you on this? How are you taking this?
Haven't lost me.
Okay.
I'm filing this under stupid cookie tricks. I think my other title for it, as I said previously, was stupid HTTP header tricks. I'm curious for the conversation. See where your head is. Why are we still doing text-based headers that can have these stupid parsing mistakes in them? And hey, great research, cool, awesome, glad the guys found it. But like, can we not do a better way now? I mean, we're sort of hanging on to baggage from the last 20 years of like HTTP spec. It's like, come on now. I don't know. Am I wrong? Where's your head on that?
I think, and part of it too, like they point out too that a Python framework support quoted strings by default, and so even this like special version trick for this cookie sandwiching, they didn't need to use to be able to steal this to pull off this attack. And the reason I point that out is that I absolutely agree. Like, why are we dealing with this? Why can't we just move on? But there's a lot of areas where we have to move on from, and there's a lot of, call them impedance mismatches, if you will, to steal an electrical engineering term, along the implementations between what does Tomcat do? What does Chrome do? What does Python do? And maybe this is a rhetorical question. I don't want to just give up, but why can't everybody just use TLS 1.3, use HTTP 2, which is actually much stricter and better about how to parse an HTTP request, or even HTTP 3, which again are very much more about here are machines parsing text or frames, and they're much better about it and get rid of a lot of ambiguity. But that was my long pause to say I think we'll be around here for at least another couple months or years talking about these types of things.
Yeah.
So maybe, I know this is cross-site scripting, a bit of a yawn, but it's clever. And cookie sandwiches, it's neat research. So not taking away from that. But here's something forward-looking, John. It's an article about a student bug bounty. Discovery supports Pico CTF cybersecurity education efforts with a $462,000 gift, which is, I think that's more than AppSec Weekly makes per episode, I'm not sure how many orders of magnitude, but it's a few. But the point here is that, yeah, exactly. This is why we're not even driving Subarus from our mom's Subaru. But the point here was that basically great work from this student who is giving back to the community. That part of that was matched by Google. But where he found these bugs was in WebAssembly. And it was pretty cool because it was in the renderer. It was a renderer exploit within WebAssembly. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any more details than that to be able to link to or point to for more learning. But, Google responded, Chrome responded and said, these are some systemic issues, which is cool. So in the spirit of John's last point about where do you want to focus your bug bounty, eyes, check out some new tech like WebAssembly too, because maybe it's still creaky. Maybe there's still some brittle implementations. And I think the other reason I want to highlight this is I'm still looking for where is people migrating to WebAssembly, because yes, speaking of repeating phrases a lot, memory safety, let's rewrite in Rust, refactor in Rust. I'm trying not to do that too much, but we have yet to hear we rewrote this in WebAssembly, or we used WebAssembly instead because it just has wonderful sandboxing and security properties. I'd love more examples. So my request here is, hey, listeners, where are some great WebAssembly projects that are doing this?
I think that's, again, sorry that our brains are aligned, because this is what I was thinking earlier when I saw this, is from the aspect of what WASM, we see so much about Rust right now, and everyone rewriting stuff in Rust, and Rust is sort of the cool person. Are we not looking in the right areas, you or me? Is it not hitting our radar, or did I mean, I guess where I'm going is is the claim of security and performance in Rust more attractive for some reason more attractive to people than similar for the web, basically for WASM. And the thing is, you can compile Rust down to WASM. You can compile a lot of things down to it. So it seems like there should be a lot of interest in it. And maybe there isn't. It's just not on our radar. Or is it I don't know. That's sort of interesting to me.
Yeah, and it's just, once again, I can just do conjecture. Does it come down to value? Does it come out down to performance? Things like that. But we would love to know. So listeners, let us know. In the meantime, John, I had to include this article because it has product security in the title. It does come from CISA and the FBI, for that matter. But the product security bad practices. And take that, OWASP Top 10. There are 13 bad practices. So now we're going to see an escalation in 2025 to see who can have a longer list. But other than just pointing to it, I don't know that there's anything really insightful that I want to call out from it, other than I like the organization across properties of a product, like maybe business logic, things like that, just security fundamentals, security features that they call it, and organizational processes and policies. So I do like how they're organizing the content, and it's pretty direct and straightforward. It says SQL injection rather than something more fun and fancy about that. So it's good, but it's still, the idea of bad practices still boils down to don't do this, which leaves developers to say, okay, well, what should I do? And to be fair, some of the recommendations should say that, but I'm always looking for, let's talk about more secure design, more things to follow rather than don't do. So that's the best. I'm exhausted off of that article. I don't know if you can.
I need to spend 30 seconds on this one. I'm still scrolling. Here's my question. Who is this written for? So number 2, based off something you just said, I will quote, and it doesn't say SQL injection up front. It says, the inclusion of user-provided input directly in the raw contents of a SQL database query string in products used in service of critical infrastructure or NCFs is dangerous and significantly elevates risk to national security, national economic security, and national public health and safety. So is this written for politicians? I don't know. It feels like either like they took an LLM and sort of said, hey, make this be more words so we get more SEO or something. I'm just sort of curious, I might have to go and sort of.
That's a great point, because it definitely does read more about influencing policy rather than do this or don't do this. So I'm going to have to go do some more of my homework and read between the lines. And we talked about personas with Niv too, which I'm just highlighting because it was a great conversation. So I hope everybody listened to that.
CISA and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, hereafter referred to as the authoring organizations. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I shouldn't be making fun of this, but I am.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what hereafter to refer to you as, but my kind co-host is what I'm going to stick with. John, let's have some fun, because I think we're having some fun this segment. We had some car hacking, and as listeners know, hopefully they listen to the very end. I always call out, give a shout out to some synthwave or related music that I'm listening to. So hopefully you're following along and getting some tracks. And here's a wonderful, really great article about the world's first MIDI shellcode. And the researcher here, a musician who had a MIDI and had some spare time and has a penchant, I'm going to pronounce in a very French manner, for excellent writing, walks through their journey through reverse engineering. And this is one of those this goes in that category of articles that are very educational, very interesting, and it hits hardware hacking, basically where to put my alligator clips or just some wires on your JTAGs or your UARTs. And then it talks about, decompiling some C, what does this firmware look like? And then running some code on their MIDI screen, or sorry, on their synth screen via just MIDI messages. So this is just a wonderful example. I think it's a good callback of where do you want to spend your bug bounty time? Do you actually want to go and earn like a few $100,000 hacking WebAssembly? Do you want to hack your mom's, Subaru? Or do you want to do something cool and hack a synth? And I vote for hacking a synth. So I don't know how you fall on this, John.
Oh no, I think this is super cute. Yeah, I'm hoping it's. I'm still working through this one. I don't know if there's enough memory on there for it to run Doom. Probably not. And if you're doing it over MIDI, it would take forever to upload it.
Of course, yes.
But still, even just this is super cute. And again, right? This is like. I mean, I could see making there's probably a few different malicious use cases you could say. Either like someone's about to go play live on stage, or maybe you can use it for like transporting like malware or something. So it's there's the reason I'm backing into it like this. My point is, or the question would be, should you be seriously considering the security of your synth? Maybe is the synth manufacturer. And sometimes these things are homegrown, right? Or like from, very small production. Sometimes not, like this Yamaha. But like, are they going to put a lot of money into securing these things? Probably not. So, this is super fun. I've never thought about doing this with the synth. I sort of want to. The only thing I have is like a little more expensive equipment, which I wouldn't want to actually start trying to hack on. But this is. Really
this is great work. And I do want to one thing too. This is from Anna Antonenko. So she's done some great work here, and she promises a follow up as well. And to your point too, in terms of security, I get more worried when I see somebody performing and put their beer on the synth, and I'm just. that I'm just waiting for that to spill and for bad things to happen. So I'm not even thinking about MIDI messages. That's where my brain goes to. And so, John, that was fun. And we've got a couple other things. This was a busy week for news. I did want to squeeze in maybe one or two other things. There was an article out of OpenSSF that was predictions for open source security in 2025. And just last week, we did our own 2025 predictions with Cody Scott. Adrian joined us once again, and Kalyani was here. But I thought I'd give you and I a chance, John, to talk about some 2025 predictions. And because this was OpenSSF, that's part of the reason that it caught my eye. Because what is that org thinking? What is the org looking at? And it's interesting to me because my reaction was more of like superficially, it's talking about AI, supply chain, things that are familiar. But it definitely is much more pro-AI in the sense of LLMs are going to make attackers more efficient. It's going to make phishing more terrible. And my response to that is more of, well, we haven't seen the value of LLMs, replacing SAST yet. Plus, defenders still have access, ostensibly, to all of those. There is a cost to be pointed out here, as you were making that point last segment as well. But also, too, if we're just saying like LLMs are making phishing have better grammar and fewer punctuation, if that's what we're concerned about, then we've missed the point about using passkeys or FIDO or getting down to the root causes of phishing. So I appreciate this article. That's why I wanted to include it. And it does talk about identity and trust near the end, which are themes I agree with. But it was just, I don't know, I think this goes into kind of my shrug category, or as listeners may note, I'm a bit more skeptical on the LLM for security value perspective.
Yeah. I mean, it's so I'm gonna just the article doesn't do much for me. I think it is going to be an interesting year with the whole LLM type thing. What's on my mind today, and I was going to ask Niv in the previous half, and I didn't get around to it. I didn't want to distract you too much. As this comes out this week, tomorrow, we'll see how badly NVIDIA gets tanked into the market today. But it finally came into the mass media that a Chinese company, DeepSeek, has figured out a way to train their large-scale LLM models, which are similar to, they claim that they're similar to ChatGPT 4.0 in their ability to converse and respond and things like that. but they claim they're able to train that model for 45 times less than what everyone else is doing right now, which is pretty incredible, right? So the point here being, if they're able to do that type of thing, otherwise it's super expensive for people to train these. And that's where I'm going is like, for a malicious actor, how can are they just using something off the shelf? Probably more than likely, right? I don't think they have a ton of money to spend on these unless they're a government org, which some are. I'm just sort of curious, like, when we talk about, it's one thing to say, ooh, the attackers are going to use AI and they're going to come and get your kittens. But what's the actual threat, or what are they doing? As you said, are they making sure that, that they're, the punctuation is better, or are they doing something where they're using that target's data in the model and then building off of that? Or so I'd like to see a little less hand waving, I think, is really the TLDR on my spiel there. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I want to include it, but this is also one of the reasons I do shy away from predictions anyway. But we will be back come December. We'll have Cody back on, and we'll go and check to see what how last week's episode held up. So listeners, stick with us.
I have to say, neither of us did our homework on this because predictions, AI, there's some sort of a joke there.
Okay, I got homework. Another. Speaking of not doing your homework, John, this is one of the techniques that I do on the show: is save one of the biggest, most technically detailed articles for last. And shucks, we're just out of time. But I do have to cover this quickly. RANsacked. I linked to it in the show notes. It is some wonderful demonstration of successful fuzzing, and they start off. I think they found one or two vulnerabilities, and then kept on going.
Yeah.
So that's what my last comments are. Just please check out RANsacked. Check out this article. It's about LTE and 5G infrastructure. So it's actually not just old school. I say everybody, but like this is old X.25, or here's like a 1G or 2G or very old SS7 types of known vulnerabilities that have been repeated, perhaps ad nauseum. These are new and different. So that's my pitch for this. So please go do the homework that I didn't do.
So this one, and we said off air, we have to call it out to our listeners, everyone. Usually if someone finds 2 or 3 vulnerabilities in something, they're like, hot damn, that's good. We got a blog post, or we got a talk, or whatever. There's 100 here. And several of them are quite nasty. Another thought, damn it. What's interesting about this to me, so at least from the cellular software I've worked with in the past, back in the container days, or my container days, it was all Java EE based code. And I think as I started going through here, I started seeing some of those patterns of the type of vulnerabilities you see in Java applications. Mm-hmm. And I suspect most of this stuff is written in Java. So, this is most definitely not the type of thing you can rewrite in Rust. Some of these code bases are huge. So maybe do you do target replacement with, okay, I'll stop talking about Rust. We need like a tip jar every time John mentions Rust. But instead I'll say WASM. Maybe do you rewrite part of these things in WASM? Or how do you think about really targeting parts of this? Like, you shouldn't be able to DOS an LTE tower. That's just like, how has that not been really well tested by now? But yeah, we could probably spend the whole 30 minutes in this one article. There's a lot of code in here, a lot of CVEs, a lot of different products they're talking about, both open and closed source. So if you either remember the days of SS7, as Mike mentioned, or you just want to see like how some of this stuff works, this is a great way to get into it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the CSRB has been disbanded. I didn't have time to throw that in, didn't think we'd have time to chat about that. But what that also means, we won't get a CSRB report about the recent telco hacks, which I think are very related to this in the sense of what are their security practices that are just fundamental in terms of the CSRB Microsoft report, a cascade of avoidable errors, or were these new and different types of vulnerabilities found by this type of fuzzing? But I'm going to just fist in the air, yay fuzzing. Let's see that as a security tool much better than LLMs. So that's my final thought of the day. I want to say thank you to John for joining the conversation and being much more engaging and interesting than an LLM. I also want to thank all of you for joining us. Please do remember to subscribe. Please share us on the socials. Check out the show notes for much more information. And speaking of synthesizers, check out Till Dawn by Beethoven. We'll see you next time on Application Security Weekly.